Is your child a driver, a dreamer, or a diplomat? Those might sound familiar, but is your child a leader? If you haven't thought about the leadership qualities in your own child, stay with us today on Deeper Living as we visit with Dr. Tim Elmore as he shares with us the nurturing of your own child and how to birth the leadership within.
From coast to coast across North America, this is Deeper Living, bringing the inspirational marketplace to your front door. We exist to bring you the latest and greatest from authors, artists, and artisans around the world. You're going to love this.
Hello and welcome to Deeper Living. I'm Merity Book, and today we are privileged to have Dr. Tim Elmore, and you're going to be visiting with us today with the title of the book. You've written many books, but the title of this book is Nurturing the Leader Within Your Child. And before we jump into this, I want to talk a little bit about your background for some of our viewers who may not be familiar with you, because this actually has spawned a whole ministry, almost a movement is what you call it, in terms of growing the leaders and growing children into the destinies that they have.
Yeah.
And share a little bit about what sort of brought this about. Your father. You have two kids, but what kind of brought you to the point for writing this book?
Well, I started working with kids in 1979 when I was finishing my college degree, and I fell in love with the art of mentoring students. I just saw that something came alive when you began to just make deposits in their heart, rather than just some big auditorium full of mentoring them.
Right.
And then I began working with Dr. John Maxwell in 1983. And I began to really fall in love with leadership and what that did to a person when they learned how to lead and not just survive.
Well, and sort of feel empowered, you know, and John Maxwell's so good at that. And just sort of saying, you know, the right words to really make you feel like, yeah, I can do this.
That's exactly.
And as a mentor, I'm sure those...
he did that for me all the time. So my love for students and my love for leadership kind of came together. And I did this book, really a culmination of well over 20 years of just working with about 50,000 kids a year, and seeing patterns and what really paid off when an adult did this with a kid.
Right.
So, so that's what sparked the book, and later the organization called Growing Leaders.
Right, and that's, now let's talk about this, because honestly, when I got the, the information on this, I got the book, and I kind of went, what's a leader? And most parents don't look at their little kids and go, oh, they're going to be a leader. A leader of what? You know, the neighborhood gang? What? You know?
Exactly.
I mean, a lot of times as parents, we don't necessarily, you look at their characteristics and you look at their tendencies, their personalities, but you're not always thinking leadership.
No doubt about it.
I mean, explain, what is a leader? And as a parent, and maybe even someone who works with kids and is not a parent.
Yeah.
What are we looking for? What do you mean by leader?
Well, I think you're exactly right. First of all, we don't look at our kids and think leader. We might think driver.
Yeah.
Like one of the types that I talk about.
Absolutely.
And we realize one day they're either going to be Adolf Hitler or Mother Teresa, one of the two, but they're going to do something with the world.
They're going to drive someone somewhere.
Yes, absolutely.
Exactly.
But I believe, first of all, the leader is not necessarily someone connected to a position or a title. Some of the greatest leaders in history, including Jesus, never had an official title or position. But they simply leveraged their God-given influence for a worthwhile cause. So that's the definition I use. If I can help my kids get connected to a cause that's worthwhile, that's kingdom-related, that does good for the world, and they're tapping into their gifts and strengths, serving them up to the world, something good's going to happen. They're going to influence positively.
Right, absolutely. And that's sort of how pulling out the leadership, it's more than just defining that personality. It's redefining it and channeling it into the direction. And
absolutely.
That's fantastic. And I know my kids are hitting some pretty critical ages. I've got one that just started, my daughter started middle school, and that whole preteen,
it's a different world.
You really, the drama plays out a different way. And the pressures and what they sort of come under from not only their peers and the classwork and, just their social, it's all social at this age. And how that begins to influence how she perceives herself, how she perceives who she might be. And, for that particular age, I know you work with schools. What is it that you say for the middle school age? This is for me personally, by the way.
Yes. Little sidebar.
Anyway, yes, I know.
Between the ages of 11 and 14, something different is happening, not only in their hormones, but in their brain. Recently, scientists have discovered that the brain is really transforming and actually pruning itself So sometimes kids who are in middle school will say things and do things and later say, I don't even know why I said that.
Right. It's like
and you're
so
thinking,
spontaneous.
hello.
Yeah.
So it's normal to have that.
Right.
That's why I think it's especially important for us to fan into flame the strength that's inside our kids. Here's what I mean. I think there's two kinds of leaders, and every one of the kids in the world fits in one of these two kinds. Habitual leaders or situational leaders. Habitual leaders are the leaders who lead out of habit. They're the natural-born leaders. That's the kid on the playground that wants to take over the team immediately and tell everybody what to do.
And all the other parents go, look at little Bobby.
Exactly.
He, like, you know, he gets the A's, he's doing this, he's doing this, he's doing this, and this. Yeah,
or they all hate him, one or the other.
Right, exactly. The kids usually hate him.
And I would say habitual leaders probably is 1 out of 10. The other 9 out of 10, our kids perhaps, are what I call situational leaders. And here's what I mean by that. They're the kids that say, I don't feel like I'm a great leader, but when they're put in the right situation that matches their passions and strengths, in that natural sweet spot, they ripple with influence. You were talking about your son and daughter and where they just feel like they're going in life. When they're in that zone, once they're in high school and college, they're just going to naturally ripple with influence. They won't have to try to be a leader. They will have influence. Right,
absolutely. I didn't even want to interrupt you because this is great. We have to jump to a short break. We'll be right back right here on Deeper Living. Welcome back to Deeper Living. I'm Meredith Book, and if you're just joining us, we are visiting with Dr. Tim Elmore, who is the author of Nurturing the Leader Within Your Child. And if you have any doubts that your child just might have leadership qualities, then you need to join us and stick with us. And Tim, just before the break, you were talking literally about 2 different leadership qualities, either habitual or situational. And either one of those, a child will fall into either category.
And so that's why I believe leadership is not so much about position, but disposition, helping them look at life a certain way and find their gift area and naturally ripple with influence rather than forcing it.
Right. Now, in that category of driver, dreamer, and diplomat, do you find that those have a tendency to also fall in those characteristics? I mean, does the dreamer fall more into situational, or do you think it's more habitual? I mean, are there certain characteristics that follow through, or?
A little bit, I think. I think the driver is the most natural habitual leader. They're the driver, steamroller, I'll ask forgiveness later, but I'm powering through, you know, that sort of thing. The bossy kid, the stubborn, strong-willed kid. And I think parents, if they have a driver kid in the house, some of them listening right now are thinking, that's my daughter, that's my son. I think, first of all...
That's my neighbor. Okay.
Yeah, that's my neighbor. If it's time to clean the room, you have to be very forthright with driver kids because they've got 14 opinions of their own. You can't drop hints. You have to say, clean your room by noon on Friday, or here's the penalty.
Right.
And I think they're natural leaders, but they're going to need to learn certain leadership qualities like patience and relationship skills and things like that.
Little diplomacy.
Yes, exactly.
And like you said, a lot of times kids might be a driver and maybe a little bit of a dreamer. So you've got someone who's just, so it's not necessarily set in stone.
Right, and sometimes it depends on the environment they're in. At school they're this, but at home they're this.
Right, right. And I've actually had parents share that with me. They'll say, with Griffin, I just had a mom the other day at school say, oh, my daughter's so perfect in school and so quiet. She comes home and she's just this wild woman. Yeah. And the teacher always thinks she's just so nice and says, oh, she's finally opening up.
Are we talking about the same
girl? Who are you talking about?
Yeah.
Not my kid. Yeah. But with the kids today, they're now called the millennial generation. Yeah. And explain what that is and why this particular generation, it's so different. Why it's so different than any other generation that we've ever.
It is. When I first started working with students, they were baby boomers, the last of the baby boomers. Then it was Gen Xers. And we figured that one out, and now it's the millennials. Millennial generation kids are what sociologists call the students born between 1984 and 2002. And they did grow up in a very different era. They grew up with Barney the Dinosaur and Blue's Clues and I Love You, You Love Me. Baby on Board signs in the back of the minivan. They feel very special. Right. In fact, they feel so special you just want to slap them sometimes and say hello.
They've been so validated that they're just special for just being here and alive and so entitled to life.
Exactly. So there's a good part of that. Their self-esteem generally is in order, but they're going to need to learn some disciplines and perhaps things that the video game did not teach them. Which is where we as parents come in. We're the mentors, the most natural mentors in their life. That's the call that we have. Whether we feel ready or not, we are the mentors, and that's why I did this book, just to give a kind of an encyclopedia on how do you do this.
Right, and also to give, I think, sort of the framework for parents to understand what they're working with, and and again, most of the parents today that do have young kids were products of the 80s, graduating in the 80s, getting their career in the 90s, and that was such a flip-flop. 80s was the whole me thing, lots of money, 90s took a nosedive. And so the parents have a whole different view. It's not the baby boom generation. It's a little bit different. It's my generation. And, now you kind of have to step back and say, okay, what is it that I really want my kids to get out of life?
You just said a mouthful. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, not at all.
I believe we not only have a new generation of kids, we have a new generation of parents. And as I've worked with PTA groups and church groups and school groups, I have noticed, and this is not in the book, but I've just recently noticed, there's 4 different kinds of damaging parenting styles that we do unwittingly. Let me rifle them up real quick. The first is the helicopter parent. That's the parent that's hovering like a helicopter over their child. Everywhere they go, they're hovering. And we do this. We do it out of love, but it can do damage because we're not letting them actually grow up and
you're not letting them open the door.
Exactly.
Get their backpack.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
The second kind is what I call the dry cleaner parent. And the dry cleaner parent is in the same way that we take our dry cleaning and say, would you have this cleaned and pressed and fixed and returned to me on Friday? We want to drop them off to a professional because it's double income, we're busy, we're not professional parents. We like to use professionals to wash our car, clean our clothes, and raise our kids.
Oh, absolutely. And even if they're not, if they're not working, I mean, I have many friends that just go, I just need my me time. So we have a nanny for 4 hours a day. And I'm going, what? Oh, so you can do laundry? No, I'm just going to go to the spa.
Yeah,
it's like, okay.
Yeah. And we're used to that. So, and you know what, just so the audience knows, I'm not against that. I just don't want us to ever give up the role that we're really supposed to play. We can't just pass our kids off to someone. The third kind is what I often call the karaoke parent. And you probably know some, but they want so much to sound like their kid, look like their kid, dress like their kid, be cool, buddy. Well, and it's not wrong to be a buddy and a friend as long as we never lose the leadership and the authority that we need to have in our life.
Well, there's the boundary.
Exactly. That's right. The last kind, Meredy, is what I call the monster parent. And the best way I can describe this is with a couple of conversations I had not too long ago with principals here in town. Both of them said a parent marched into their office mad at a grade that their child had gotten on a paper. The principal said, the more I talked to the parent, the more I realized that parent knew an awful lot about that paper, like every single line.
Yeah, like it was the parent's paper.
Exactly. And they were mad that they got a bad grade. I just described the monster parent as a parent who's living out their unlived life through their child.
Right, vicariously.
Then the Little League or the soccer mama or whatever.
And they're out there. And I don't want to interrupt. This is great stuff. Stay with us right here on Deeper Living as we continue to visit with Dr. Tim Elmore. Welcome back to Deeper Living. We're visiting with Dr. Tim Elmore, and we've been discussing really nurturing the characteristics and the leadership qualities in our kids. But even so much, you were saying, not just raising kids, but it's a new generation that's raising kids and all the problems that poses. And I want to sort of segue a little bit into growing leaders, because that's the whole movement. That's what your organization is all about. Share really kind of in a nutshell what the vision behind your behind this movement, behind the organization, what all of your whole team is out there working, because you work with schools, nonprofits, colleges, parent groups. And how do you handle all of that? What is it? Share what this whole organization's about.
Sure. This book came first, and I told you it was a culmination of many, many years. About 2 years after this book came out, we realized we need to be proactive and form a nonprofit organization to help parents, youth pastors, principals, faculty members, staff, boys and girls clubs, et cetera, really began to not just survive the program we're trying to do, but thrive as we mentor our kids.
Actually see those changes, see some proactive response from the mentoring. Because there's a lot out there on, how to raise kids. There's a lot of, seminars that you can attend as a parent for specific, discipline problems or this or that. There's just a lot out there. So what makes the growing leader so unique and different that is, completely
that
compelling?
It's needed.
That it's needed.
Well, I definitely don't claim to be Gary Bauer or Jim Dobson or any parenting expert. In fact, if anything, I'm a dad with two of my own kids from the millennial generation, and I'm in front of a whole bunch of kids. And like I mentioned, we partner with schools or groups to help them really nurture a culture of leadership. We help adults mentor kids. We have a curriculum called Habitudes, which anybody can teach because it's pictures, but we just try to set schools in order and groups in order to really begin to have a plan to nurture leadership. And so growingleaders.com is our website. And that's on there. There's a plethora of ideas and
all
resources.
The information. And talk about sort of the characteristics. I know in a lot of the, what you've put together, you've got the vision, and then you've got what, 7 characteristics or things that you feel are necessary in order for kids to kind of get through this stage in their lives into adulthood.
Sure. There are 4 inward qualities and then 6 behaviors that we try to really bring out. But when we partner with school, it often starts with an event.
Right.
Because I think kids usually, well, they're used to going to events, concerts, retreats,
Absolutely.
conferences,
Yeah.
and the light bulb goes on. But oftentimes we end with the event, and then it just becomes a memory. No life changes happen.
Right.
Youth camp, growing up.
Yeah,
we
there's
go
no
away.
follow-up.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and so we're mad at ourselves 10 days later because we didn't keep the commitment we made on Friday night. So we try to help them do a process following the event to really begin to mentor in these communities the leadership
Right.
stuff that we believe is already inside, screaming to get out.
Right, and obviously that's tailor-made because you guys
Yes.
don't just do Christian organizations, you do secular schools
Public
and public
schools,
schools. So just depending on what it is, their needs.
Right. We really
it.
do try to tailor-make it so that it fits the Boys and Girls Club or wherever we're going. And we're seeing great success. We have hundreds of schools that we're partnering with, and it's so fun when we get emails or calls, like you know when you get them.
Right.
And you say, this really made a difference. These
Right.
kids are different now.
Right, and I think most parents, especially my generation of parent, is almost willing to try anything because our kids are exposed to so much more sophisticated media, sophisticated vocabulary. They grow up a lot faster, and it's easy because most of us just go, God, wasn't I just in college?
Yeah.
And then we turn around, and that
the gap.
it's the gap, and you kind of feel like you want to respond the way you would if you were just responding to a contemporary, and then you realize, oh my gosh, my daughter just said that, or my son just said that. I can't just make my off comment to them. And, it's difficult to sort of, realize that they are very, very intelligent and they're very savvy, and that's very different than any of the generations in the past. They're growing up faster.
Yeah, they are, and they're exposed to a lot fast, maybe before they're ready. Dr. Leonard Sweet, a sociologist, says that this is an epic generation, EPIC. They're experiential, participatory, image-rich, and connected, technologically and relationally. So whenever we teach leadership, we try to teach it in an epic way. Is it an experience? Is it participatory? Do they get to do something? Is it driven by an image, which is where Habitudes comes in? And do we help them connect with each other and connect with technology too?
Right, absolutely. And I want to jump off at that point. When we come back, we're going to explore that just a little bit more. So stay with us right here on Deeper Living.
Every good and perfect gift comes down from heaven above. Every good and perfect gift from above. Every good and perfect gift comes down from heaven above. Every good and perfect gift from above. From the Father of lights. From the Father of lights, we prove there is no changing. From the Father of lights, who's always the same. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord. Every good and perfect gift. Let's all sing it together. Comes down from heaven above. Every good and perfect gift from above. Every good and perfect gift. Every good and perfect gift comes down from heaven above. Every good and perfect gift from above. From the Father of lights. From the Father of lights, we prove there is no changing. From the Father of lights, who is always the same. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord, yeah. Up we go. Praise the Lord, yeah. Every good and perfect gift comes down from heaven above. Every good and perfect gift from above. Every good and perfect gift. Every good and perfect gift.
And welcome back to Deeper Living. If you're just joining us, we've been visiting with Dr. Tim Elmore, and before the break, you were really discussing sort of the epic principle and how growing leaders, how you guys operate as an organization and how you set up events and different things to connect the kids, but it's the follow through and how important it is. And one of, I guess, probably your major resource for these is the Habitude books. And these are, I don't want to call them devotions, but word studies and why don't I have you talk about this, Tim?
Habitudes are images that form leadership habits and attitudes.
Right.
So each small book, you notice how small they are.
Right.
It's not intimidating, but each one of them contains 13 pictures or images that represent a timeless, universal principle in
Right.
leadership or life.
Right.
For instance, I noticed you open it
Yep,
up to the
I've
iceberg.
got the iceberg one. I'll see if
The
it's-
iceberg is really the first rule of leadership. And what I believe it teaches us is that the 10% above the waterline, the tip, represents my skills, but the 90% that lies below the surface represents my character. And it's
Right.
always what's below the surface that sinks the ship.
Yeah, I love that you started the first book on character,
Yeah.
just and how important it is, and what
Yeah.
again what you don't see, because a lot
Yeah.
of kids growing up, they don't realize, they think they're getting away with things.
I know.
And
Yeah.
they think they're getting away. But this whole premise, you go through
There's a story.
and you talk about
Yep.
the story,
Yep.
and then it sort of gets into sort of a discussion.
Yeah, there's
Well,
a
you've got the
discussion.
biblical verse, and then you sort of walk it into a whole discussion. Now,
Right.
is this done? Can this be done with parents with their kids, or a teacher,
Yep.
or how
we
do
have
you?
many parents that are doing
Okay.
one habitude a week at dinner
Okay.
on Monday night.
Oh yeah, okay.
We have schools doing it with posters up and the books they got from growingleaders.com.
Right,
and
right.
So they're going through, the kids going through books. If it's a Christian school, they'll be doing it in a chapel, perhaps. If it's a public school, in homeroom, they'll take one habitude at the beginning of the week and go through
Right,
it.
right.
And then they'll have some small community going on where they, like, we're going to introduce it to athletes and have teams
Right.
go through it. So that's kind of how it
Well,
how it
and I
goes.
think, and we were talking a little bit before the show too, and at the break, is we said all these principles apply to anyone, whether you're a child or an adult. And like you said, for athletes, it's perfect. It's
Yeah.
all it all comes down to the character
Yeah.
issues, and really, growing those character issues within
Yeah.
the kids.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing, I think it's obvious where your heart and where your vision is for the kids, and to really grow these leaders. But if someone was to take this away, or if they're out there listening to this and they're really interested in it, they can go to the website. I'll have you.
Sure, yeah.
And I'll have you mention that again.
growingleaders.com.
And it's .com, and it has all of these materials
Yep.
and the books and all of that.
And articles, free stuff on the website too they
Right.
can
Now,
download.
how does someone go about setting up an event with you if they've got a youth group or a school?
They could call us or email us from the website
Okay.
contact information and just say we're interested in doing a conference, or we just have a question,
Right.
and we'll be sure and get back to them and talk to them about
Okay.
how to start the journey.
Right, how to get it started, and if there's maybe a parent that might want to be a key parent
Yeah,
or a leader, if it's just a
yes.
smaller group, so they can do something like that. Now, what do you guys have planned for the future? I know you travel a lot and speak. Is there sort of your agenda for the next couple of months?
Yeah, we will be doing an Ivy Jungle Conference, and that's actually for college staff
Okay,
that will come
okay.
together in Orlando.
Yep.
We'll be going to Egypt. We're going overseas now, in Asia, in the Middle East, Europe, and
Wow,
Latin America, and the
wow.
Caribbean. We're finding Growing Leaders partners who will have a growingleaders.com in their area and
Right.
kind of launch it in there for culturally relevant for their area.
Right, and I think it's great that you mentioned the international, because again, talking about this millennial generation, they're connected in ways that we've never been
Oh my
connected.
gosh, yeah.
And the world is getting smaller. It's getting smaller, and these kids are going to have to learn how to navigate within cultures that we just took for granted that we never need to know anything about.
know it.
And it's no longer acceptable not to know what's happening clear across the world.
You're right.
And so that's fantastic that you guys are moving over there.
Well,
So-
the phrase we often use, Meredy, is we want to help adults build a fence at the top of the cliff rather than a hospital at the bottom. Let's solve the problem before it begins.
yeah, that's great.
Well,
That's great.
it's how we think. Let's prevent it. What would happen if we nurtured leadership in these kids rather than just try to help them survive high school?
Right, right.
How many Middle East kids might not be terrorists,
Right.
but might be great leaders?
Right,
If we just
exactly.
begin to build these principles.
Well,
into
and
their life.
again, and I think the college level, it's
Yes.
taking college
Yeah.
into adulthood. It has been wonderful to have you on. I personally have learned more in 20 minutes that I know I'm going to be able to take home to my kids.
Thanks.
But it is wonderful, and as you guys continue to add more into your resources, I would be thrilled to have you back on our show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
And thank you for watching us here at Deeper Living.